sure my recording's working. Yes, all right. And then after that, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to pop them in chat, and we should have plenty of time to have a talk. So yeah, today we're talking all about getting back into hiking after a little bit of time off. So this is relevant for people who maybe at the very, very beginnings of their training journey leading into an adventure, maybe people who kind of was on a good run for a while, fell out of it for holidays, for sickness, whatever it may be. We're going to be talking through a few ideas on this front. So essentially, when it comes down to this type of thing, for a lot of people out there, hiking, it might be a regular part of their life. It might not be a big deal. It might be something that they do every month, every week, whatever it may be. They don't really give it two thoughts about stepping onto the trail or whatever it may be. For others, there may be a situation where, maybe we haven't actually been out on the trail for a while. Maybe it's been like, in the shorter term, we've been sick, we've been a bit demotivated, weather's been bad, it's just been a few weeks. For some people, it may be like, oh, I only really hike like, in certain seasons through the years, and maybe I haven't been out in quite a while. For some people who booked on an adventure, maybe you haven't done any serious hiking or any type of hiking in years and years and years, and this is a big step up into things, or whatever it may be. And in these situations, we kind of want to put a bit of thought in regards to returning to the trail because if we do have a big trip in our sights, and being with Camino Women, most of you probably do, if not all of you, getting out on the trail at some stage is a necessity. It is something you definitely want to be doing. It's the best thing you'd be doing for your training. But all too often for some people, the first steps of getting back on the trail can sometimes be a little bit tricky. It's usually not so much tricky in the sense of, hey, everything goes wrong and, I completely ruined my journey and I could never go out on the trail again, whatever it may be. But more tricky in the sense that sometimes it can be uncomfortable. It's not much fun. It can sort of like sometimes rattle our confidence or whatever it may be. And it's just not the pleasure it should be. So we're going to be talking through some ideas today just to kind of, make sure this goes as smoothly as possible. So I'll just preface this by saying, like, a lot of what I am going to be talking about, or a good portion of what I'm going to be talking about, is going to be about easing yourself into this and easing yourself into hiking and making sure you're slow and gentle and nice to yourself. You're not biting off too much more than you can chew. One thing that we just want to keep top of mind, specifically in our situation where, with Camino Women, we've got an end goal that you want to be training for. Even though we're going to be talking about being nice to yourself, taking things slow, taking things gentle, we always do want to keep in mind that we do have an end goal that we're training for. We do have a particular timeline because sometimes when I talk about these things or sometimes when we talk about these subjects, people take the advice and maybe just go a little bit too far in the other direction. They're a little bit too nice to themselves. They take too long getting into things and then they end up being a little bit underprepared for the trail and, not in the best position at all. So everything that we're going to be talking about today, just keep in mind and hand in hand, you want to make sure that's hand in hand with you, and making sure you have enough time to actually get ready for your trip and you have enough, bit of a plan of attack to kind of get yourself where you need to be. So with that being said, as I say in probably 75% of these presentations, I really, really just strongly urge anyone who does have a trip coming up to spend a little bit of time just creating a longer term hiking plan, just a rough plan so you kind of know what you're doing from now till your adventure, to give you a bit of a rough idea of where you're at and what you need to be doing. I won't go into it today, but what I will do is I'm going to share the link in chat, and I've got a presentation which just covers this whole topic in a little bit of detail. So if anyone hasn't seen me talk about this in previous presentation or hasn't actually put together a longer term hiking plan, there's a whole presentation on that which you go through and dig into it. But just keep that in mind as we go through things. So let me skip through this. All right. So basically, when we are looking at returning to hiking, whether this is months in between, years in between, or in a bit of a shorter term, being sick, whatever it may be, weeks in between, there are a few common mistakes I often see from people with this. Number one is more often than not, people will jump in the deep end with it. And what I mean by that is they'll just be like, hey, last year I used to be able to do a certain amount of hiking, or 5 years ago I used to be able to do a certain amount of hiking, or even 4 weeks ago I used to be able to do a certain amount of hiking. I've had a bit of a break here, and I'm just going to go back to what I was doing, or I'm just going to go back to doing quite a bit, or whatever it may be. So many people do tend to overestimate their abilities on the trail after a break. Again, it's not usually to the extent where they're getting themselves into serious danger or anything like that, but it is to an extent where it's not much fun. And hiking should be fun. Hiking should be enjoyable. We don't want to get sore. We don't want to get exhausted. We don't want to be dreading it. So we want to keep this in mind. And this can, yeah, often lead to us just overextending ourselves, aches, pains, pulling up like, over, really sore legs or whatever it may be the next day. We don't want that. Ultimately, when you are returning to hiking, you want to be a little bit conservative getting back into things. And I'll cover how to do that in a moment. On the flip side of things, some people kind of go the other way with this, and it's maybe not quite as often, but it does happen. Is people wait a little bit too long? Maybe they've been sick, or maybe the weather it's been like months and months, or whatever it may be, and they just keep on putting off their hiking. They're putting it off, they're putting it off, they're putting it off, and many people end up just turning into like this big thing in their heads. And they're like, everything has to be right. I have to have the perfect weather. I have to make sure I have every single piece of gear that I need. I need to make sure I have a friend and this and that. And sometimes it just ends up being just this big thing in our heads that we can sometimes take a little while to get on top of. Um, and the tricky thing here, if we're just doing this day to day life, not that big a deal. But if we do have a trip coming up and a timeline coming up, this can end up actually wasting a lot of time. And I've seen hikers who literally will spend 8 weeks out of a 16-week period where they keep on saying, I've got to hike, I've got to hike, I've got to hike, and just nothing happens. So we're just going to keep this in mind. On top of that, sometimes we've had a bit of a break. This isn't so much in the people who've had a break for 3 or 4 weeks, but people more haven't hiked since last year or maybe multiple years. We just forget the basics, the real, real, real basic things that we do it once and we forget about it, like, never again for this year. But we forget the basics, which just keep us comfortable. And yeah, we just want to make sure we're on top of that. And the other mistakes we often see from people is just, they'll go on their first hikes after a little while and they won't do much reflecting. In the sense that every hike we go out is a bit of a learning lesson. Sometimes we lose perspective of what's going on and this and that. And if we are training for an adventure, we kind of want to do a bit of a reflection time on this type of stuff. And if you are returning to a hike after a break, we just need to remember this is a starting point, whether it's been months or years or even more, just weeks, whatever it may be. We want to keep it in perspective and say this is a starting point. We want to move forward, and we want to improve in one way or another as we go forward. So with those common mistakes identified, I'm going to talk you through a really, really, really simple process that I sort of recommend here. Again, this is applicable for if you just had like a month off, if you had a year off, had multiple years off, whatever it may be. Ultimately, what we're going to talk through is a very, very, very simple action plan, which will kind of cover those mistakes and just to get you that first hike back. So first and foremost, if you are in a situation where, say you have a trip booked in and you are the person who's been umming and ahhing getting out on the trail, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do it, but I've got to get this right, I've got this right, I've got to figure this out, or whatever it may be. If there are people on the call who are in that situation, this is exactly for you. While I'm chatting right now, what I want you to do is get your phone out, get your computer out, get your calendar out, whatever you use for a calendar, get it out right now. And literally just look at your calendar, look what you get coming up for the next 4 weeks, and just find a day that you have free or morning that you have free on a weekend. And literally just schedule in something. Say, this day, I'm going to go out and hike. Literally could be this weekend, whatever it may be. If you've been hesitating, put it in your calendar right now. Next thing you want to do is if you're in a situation where you have been trying to find friends to hike with, and you're like, I don't really want to go out until I've got people around me or whatever it may be, or it's a little bit tricky to line up. Straight away, get something in the calendar, and then just text 3 friends or 3 people you may know who want to hike with you, and just say, hey, would you want to go hike on this day or whatever it may be? Don't have to give any more details than that, but literally just extend the invitation. I know how difficult it can be lining up schedules. I know how difficult it can be trying to find people who may want to go out and hike and be in the same thing and this and that. But if you do have anyone in mind, friends, family members, whatever it may be, get those texts out right when you book it in. From there, basically, while you've kind of got that momentum going, you're like, hey, got something in the calendar, whatever it may be. We just want to find a trail straight away. We want to find something we can get into and just get this rolling. Best place to do here, and this is applicable again if you just have like a month off, if you have multiple, a year off or whatever it may be. Ask yourself the question: what time or distance hike would I be 100% confident doing this weekend if I was going out this weekend, and for it to still feel easy? Now, what I mean by that is essentially we want to think in our head: if I went out and did a hike this weekend, what would be the distance that I could do and it would still feel easy? It wouldn't be at the end of my abilities. It wouldn't be like a challenge. It'll just be easy, or whatever it may be. Just ask yourself that question, see what you come up with. And essentially, whatever your answer is saying that it still will feel easy, take that answer and reduce it down by 25%. So what that means is if in your head you're like, yeah, I could probably do like 4 hours of hiking and that feels, I think that's pretty well within my means. What your goal is going to be for your first hike is you're going to do a 3 hour hike. Or if you're like, I could probably do 2 hours, then it's going to be an hour and a half hike or whatever it may be. Now, the idea behind this is essentially if we've had a bit of a break with our hiking, we always tend to overestimate our abilities on the trail, as we said before. But what we want to do is make sure the first hike that we go on, it's a pleasure. It's enjoyable. It is like, it's not a challenge. It's not difficult. We just want you to go out and just have a good time. Because there's so many factors with our hiking that we need to figure out: our food, our pacing, how we're going to deal with the animals, and this and that. We just want the walking itself to be doable, to be easy. So take whatever answer you did and reduce it down by 25%. Once you've got that rough answer, then you kind of want to go to, probably the easiest is just go to a website with local trails. You can use like guidebooks or anything, but websites tend to be the easiest thing. Alltrails.com is good. You can basically go onto these websites and just go all trails, type in where I live, and it pops up with a bunch of different options around trails, which may be an hour around or half an hour away from where you live or whatever it may be. And essentially what you want to do is just dig through that, take 10 minutes and dig through a list of maybe 3 hikes, which are reasonable to get to. It's not hours and hours and hours away. Hopefully you have something nearby if you're lucky enough, which roughly falls within your target. So you have a few different options there. And just dig through and kind of see what's there. And then literally just choose whichever one interests you the most. If there's 3 hikes and 3 hikes for 3 hours and you're like, oh, they're all kind of relatively similar, just see whichever has the prettiest picture, whichever is the nicest or whatever it may be. And literally take that, put that in the calendar and say, I'm going to go do that on that day. Now, this may sound a little bit simple for some people. You might be like, oh, you really need to talk through this. But I promise, like the people who are in that kind of analysis paralysis of getting started, it's getting moving, this is really significant. It's just step by step by step, just make it happen. So after that, that's your first hike. Booked it in, it's in the calendar, this and that. Next up, we just want to make sure we're covering the basics. And this stuff, if you have done hiking in the past, it's all stuff you probably already do. It's probably stuff you probably already know. But as I said, if we've had a bit of a break from things, we can often forget about this. And if we forget about some of this stuff, it'll just put us into trouble. Or not trouble, I don't want to be too dramatic, but it can just make things uncomfortable, have an issue, whatever it may be. So the basics, make sure whatever hike you're doing, plenty of snacks. Never go out hiking without any food. Bring plenty of snacks. Bring more than you need. Make sure there's something in there. Plenty of water, electrolytes, simple. Basic first aid kit. Just make sure there's really, really basic. So if you slip over and you have a tumble, there's a few bits and pieces you can do to help yourself out. Make sure you have some blister options. If you haven't hiked for 4 weeks, if you haven't hiked for 4 months, if you haven't hiked for multiple years, last thing you want is pick up a blister halfway through the trail and be like, oh my gosh, this sucks. Million and one different ways to deal with blisters. I really like what's called hiker's wool, which is literally just lamb's wool in a packet. And essentially what you do is you get this big wad of lamb's wool, keep it in your pack, and if you ever feel a blister coming on, you rip off a bit of wool, put it in your sock. Really, really good. You can buy a packet for like $20 online. It's really, really cool. There's a few brands around these days, but literally that's all it is, lamb's wool. I quite like that, but whatever you use for your blisters. On top of that, just put a little reminder on your phone just to check the weather and to act appropriately. So if it's going to be a stinking hot day, make sure you bring in more water. Make sure you bring in electrolytes. Make sure you've got a hat. The basics. If it's going to be freezing cold, make sure you bring a jacket. If it's going to be rain, all of this is common sense. But if we've had a bit of a break, sometimes it kind of goes out the window. On top of that, know your route. Last thing you want is the first hike back after a little while is just like, oh my gosh, I'm lost. Or, oh my gosh, it's like, I planned for 3 hours. That was kind of my limit. And all of a sudden I've hiked for 5 hours and I'm exhausted. This sucks. I don't want to hike again. So, if you're using a phone to do your trails or whatever, save or download the map. Make sure you're not relying on the internet, whatever it may be. I typically recommend just printing off track notes. So you've literally got a paper version as well. If you go in the middle of nowhere, you may want to take more serious things and get like take more serious steps. But if you're just getting your first hike back, that's typically pretty simple. And very, 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 very important, if you are going out with a friend, if you are going out with a partner, if you are going out with a buddy or whatever it may be, make sure you have a conversation with them and just sort of say, hey, I haven't hiked in a little while. Can we please go at my pace? I haven't hiked in a little while. Can we please make sure that we're having plenty of rest or whatever it may be? Because this is one of the things that just trips a lot of people up. And you go out with a friend, maybe they a little bit more active with you than you, maybe they've hiked more regularly than you, or maybe they're just a quicker walker than you, and you go out and they set a cracking pace that you're not used to, you get tired, you get blisters, don't have a good time. Again, we don't want that. So make sure you do have a conversation if you are going to have a friend. Just set, set the boundaries and just say, hey, let's kind of go. And keep it easy. All of this, very, very basics, stuff you probably already know, stuff you've probably already done in the past, but again, just keep that top of mind if you're getting into things. Now, if you're in a situation, again, some people do fall into this and they're like, oh my gosh, like, oh, I really haven't hiked in years and years, or maybe I've never done a hike before, or maybe I've never done a 2 hour walk before, and I am a little bit worried about this and stressing out or whatever it may be. Totally fine, totally normal. If you are a little bit worried about this type of stuff or just getting into things, couple of simple things that can make a big, big, big difference is number one, just set yourself the task of saying have more rest than you need. And what I mean by that is if you want to go out for a 3 hour hike, it doesn't mean you have to hike for 3 hours straight. A lot of people are like, I've got to do it start to finish and I'll break there. Set yourself the task every hour. I'm going to sit down and take 10 minutes and just chill out. I'm going to have a super sip of water, whatever it may be. Just take more rest than you need. Sometimes we don't allow ourselves to do that without someone telling us to do it. So that's me telling you to do it. That's perfectly fine. On top of that, is if you're stepping into maybe something it's like 4 or 5 hours and you're like, yeah, I kind of want to do that, but it is making me a little bit nervous. Then again, you can break it up. It doesn't have to be long hiking. It doesn't have to be short rests. Bring a nice morning tea, spend half an hour having morning tea, spend half an hour having lunch, even bring a book on the trail, just chill out and take a little while. Do what you can to break it up because when you're looking at training, it doesn't have to be running yourself into the ground. It's really just accumulating that time of moving on the trail. But that time moving can be broken up as much as you want. So, keep that in mind if you are a little bit worried about it. Now, next up, we just want to keep in mind, okay, we've gone out a hike, we've booked it in, we've made it happen. If I've had a bit of a break from hiking, whether it's just 4 weeks, I was sick, whether it's, multiple months or whether it's years or whatever it may be, very, very, very common for us to get sore afterwards. Sore calves, sore hips, sore quads, sore hammies, whatever it may be. Very, very common because one of the most biggest risk factors for muscle soreness is just us going from not doing a huge amount just to all of a sudden getting lots of exposure to something. It's just a stress the body hasn't done in a while, and soreness can come up. And again, we don't really want that. We don't want to be like hobbling around for 3 days after a hike. We don't want our calves, absolutely cooking us. We don't want to be sitting down the toilet seat and like, oh, this really sucks. Be nice to ourselves. So there's a few really, really simple things you can do for recovery just to kind of help you that. This stuff is really good for any type of hiking, any type of training, even if you haven't had a big break. Very, very simple, but can make a big difference. So, as I said, first hike back, aches and sore muscles, pretty common. If it does happen, don't freak out. It is normal. But we want to do what we can to reduce it. First thing, most simple thing is just make sure you have planned out your dinner before you hike. And what I say by that is a lot of people will, you go on a hike, you have a big day, you get home, you're like, oh my gosh, last thing I want to do is go to the shops. So we just grab something on the way home or we just grab some takeout or whatever it may be, which isn't a big deal, but our dinner can make a pretty big difference in regards to our recovery. So what I typically recommend is have it planned out before you go, whether it's all bought at home and all the ingredients are there at home already, or at the very least you've written down what you need so you can just pick it up on the way home with ingredients. There are a million and one things you can do here, but when we're looking at dinner for recovery, we just want to make sure we have a nice holistic meal. We want to make sure we have some protein, which is going to fuel muscle recovery, very, very important. We want to make sure we have some carbohydrates, which is basically important after any exercise, some fat, which does have, its role to play, and also plenty of veggies as well. There are a million and one different meals which you kind of cover those bases, but just keep that in mind, after your hike. That can all play a significant role in your recovery. Stay on top of it. Rehydration, pretty important. Most of the time we come off the trail, no matter how much water we drink, a lot of the time we will be a little bit dehydrated. So the quicker we can rehydrate, the better. General rule of thumb for hydration, a little bit tricky to do when you're on the trail, but when you're at home or on the way home, a bit easier to do. Our judge of hydration is our urine color. If we go to the toilet, our urine is cleared, a straw colored, that means we're pretty hydrated, we're pretty good. If it's a bit darker, we just want to drink, a glass or two of water. Very, very simple, but plays a significant role in recovery. A little bit of stretching that evening. Stretching isn't going to cure muscle soreness. It's not absolutely going to make a massive difference, but a little bit can make a little bit of a difference. Can be nice just to kind of ease restless legs at the end of the day and help you sleep a little bit better. So, 5 minutes of just doing a few stretches on your legs before going to bed can be quite nice. It's help you sleep a little bit better. Even if you're lucky enough to have a bath, having a warm bath and just hanging out in the bath, if you got magnesium salts, stuff like that, realistically, anything that's just kind of relaxing, anything that's calming can be quite nice. And you just want to plan this out, as many of these things as you can after your first hike, just so, again, you wake up in the morning and you're kind of feeling okay. You're kind of feeling fresh. So it's all positive, it's all happy, it's all fun. So the next hikes that you do, are going to be easy to do, basically. And on top of that, if you can do a bit of movement, if you do your hike, first thing in the morning and say you hike from 6 to 9 or something like that, and then you go sit on the couch all day, sometimes that can just be a little bit extra soreness inducing just because we're not doing a huge amount of movement. So if you are having a bit of a lazy day afterwards, totally fine. But just sort of say, hey, maybe I'll just stretch my legs, do a little lap around the block, or maybe I'll just do a bit of movement around the house or whatever. A little bit of movement goes a long way. And then, as I said before, just remember if things are sore, it's not the end of the world. Muscle soreness tends to come from just doing something your body isn't used to. So, very, very common the first hike back. Um, Probably it won't be as bad next time. It's not the end of the world, but be nice to yourself here. And then the kind of final thing on this little list is post hike reflecting. Now, this is really, really valuable for anyone who's just regularly hiking and going out, that it's maybe not as pressing. A lot of people won't do it. But if you are training for a particular adventure, doing some post-hike reflecting can be really, really, really useful. Just purely for the fact that just, as I said, each hike as we go through, we kind of want to be improving, we want to be moving forward. And just do a bit of a reflection while things are fresh in your mind can go a long way. So after each hike you do, the first hike you do, and also any other hike you're doing through your training plan, a few good questions to ask yourself at the end of the day. Number one, how's your energy? Quite often, give this in like a scale of 1 to 10, just so you can kind of track it over time. 1, my energy sucked, I could barely move. 10 being I was like, the Energizer Bunny, whatever it may be. Give yourself a score. How do my legs feel on the trail? Again, you could do 1 to 10, whatever it may be. 1 being like absolute cement, I could barely move them. 10 feeling as light as a feather, whatever it is. Were there any sections of the trail which felt tough today or tougher than they should be? Uphills, downhills, rougher terrain, traverse, rock scrambling, whatever it may be, jot it down. Were there any sections on the trail which made me a bit nervous? And I was like, oh, you know what? My heart's racing a little bit, or, whatever it may be. And how did I feel afterwards? Whether that's, the evening afterwards, whether that's the next day when you wake up, or whatever it may be. I usually recommend trying to get those things done sooner rather than later because our memory's pretty rubbish. And even if you wait 2 days and you try to think back and you're like, oh, I don't know. We're really, really very unreliable with our memories. We're all the same. So if you can get that done the day when it's fresh, can be much better. Big pardon. And then once you've got those answers, then we basically use these answers and you can use them to plan basically your training ahead. Because essentially when we're talking about preparing for an adventure, we're kind of using our training to improve our improve our hiking. So we think, okay, whatever we're struggling with in our hiking, we can leverage our training in our week to kind of make that a little bit better. And we use those answers to improve it. So if you're in a situation where you're like, you know what, my energy was a bit low. I was kind of good for the first 3 quarters, but then I got really tired towards the end. That's a sort of sign saying, okay, maybe I need to make sure I'm doing a bit more cardio. Am I doing any cardio in my week? And if not, get started on some. If I am doing some, maybe I need to kind of step things up. And in previous presentations, we talked a lot about different types of cardio for hikers and kind of dig ideas that. On top of that, nutrition. If my energy was low, 9 times out of 10, nutrition wasn't quite there. So you can go have a look at I think it was like energy tips for hikers presentation I did, which is on the Camino Women website, which talks through some ideas on that. Or if your legs are really sore or wobbly, then it's a sign saying, okay, maybe you need to work on some strength training or plus an extra cardio, do some hills and some stairs or whatever it may be. If the downhills or uphills or rougher terrain was tough, maybe it's a sign I need to do a little bit more strength. If I was really, really nervous about a sort of situation, think, okay, what can I maybe do to improve that? Was I really, really nervous about downhills? Then, okay, I need to improve my strength. I need to work on my balance. Maybe I need to practice in downhills or whatever it may be. And if I was exhausted afterwards, maybe I need to up my recovery and sort of say, hey, yeah, it's fair enough being tired for an hour or two afterwards, but if it threw me out for the rest of the day, maybe the things I was doing the rest of the day wasn't quite as good. This is all really, really simple examples here, but like you can see it's like very, very useful just to help you dial in things further down the line. And you can kind of use this as a regular ongoing thing for your training hikes just to suss it out. Also a very, very useful thing after your adventure, after your big adventure, whatever you're doing, doing the same thing while it's fresh in your mind. So for next time you book yourself onto another 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 day adventure, whatever you're doing, you can actually say, oh, you know what, these things, all, I struggle with this, I was good with this, and maybe these things I want to improve on. And this is exactly the same thing that I'll do myself after any significant event. So if I go on a major training hike, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sucked. Then I'm like, okay, go through all this. If I go out and do a big fitness event or hike or whatever it may be, I'll go through this stuff. So when I come around 12 months or 24 months or how many months later, I can kind of work through this and help it all out. Um, yeah, and also on top of this, the final thing is this can be actually really useful to keep things in perspective. In the sense, if you do go out on that first hike or you have a hike further down the line and you're like, everything went wrong, or everything was really tough, or whatever it may be. If we're doing this reflecting and saying, hey, this is actually a point which we are trying to improve, just mentally, that can really, really help. Because we're all our own worst enemies. Sometimes we can just get sucked in the world of saying, hey, that sucked, I sucked, this wasn't very good, or whatever it may be. We don't want that. So if we can kind of flip the script in our head and say, you know what, that wasn't much fun, but these are all the things I'm going to improve on, and I'm going to make this better. Mentally, that can be quite nice for us. It can often help. So that's kind of the main stuff I wanted to cover today. Getting back into the hiking, as I said, whether it's a short break after being sick, whether it's been months or years, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be too complicated. You don't have to put spreadsheets together or anything like that for this. But if you can put these simple ideas into action, it really can go a long way into helping things go smoothly, making sure you're having a good time, reduce the risk of those common things just tripping you up and, turning into a bit of a chore, a bit of an ordeal, or whatever it may be, and just making your journey go smoothly moving forwards. Because one of the things I've seen time and time and time and time and time again from my hikers that I train is if they are having a good time when they're actually going out and hiking for their training and they're enjoying it, it's positive, it's not exhausting them, they haven't, it's all been good. That makes everything go smoother. That makes them enjoy their training more. That makes them stick with the things more. It makes them ultimately be able to get to their adventure feeling in a way better position. But it's the people who are kind of going out on these hikes and they're always exhausted or like they have a couple of bad experiences and this and that, and they're the ones that tend to drop off, forget about their training, and then their trip has a bit of a question mark around it. So it's simple stuff, but definitely worthwhile considering. Now, final thing I'll sort of say, as I always say on these presentations, if you were in a situation you're like, okay, Ron, this all sounds good, but you know what, I have a trip coming up. I wouldn't mind a little bit extra help with this, get a little bit of personalized help. I would love to chat with you. As I always sort of say in these calls, what I do through Summit Strength is that we offer personalized online training programs for hikers to help them get fit, strong, and resilient for their adventures. So what we do through our packages, we do a big focus on the training side of things. So we create a custom and personalized workout plan to help you get ready for anything the trail may throw at you, covering cardio, strength training, hiking training, recovery mobility work, making sure we're ticking off all our boxes there. We also put a big emphasis into education, helping you on all things like nutrition, recovery, self-care, mental strength, and also give you the coaching and support and accountability to keep you on track moving forward. Now, if that sounds like it's something you want to learn a little bit more about, just sort of see if it maybe may tickle your fancy. You learn a little bit more by going to summitstrength.com.au/online. On that page, there's a big video which kind of goes into things in a little bit more detail. And if it does sound like something you want to explore a little bit more, you can book a free call with our team on that page as well. We can have a bit of a chat and dive in and learn a little bit more about what's going on. And yeah, if we may be able to help you out. So if you want to check it out, go to summitstrength.com.au/online and you can take it from there. So with that being said, that's the end of what I had to cover today. I really do hope it was helpful for some people. I hope it gives a few insights and just give you a few simple things to work through. As I said, today's been a little bit shorter than usual. So if anyone did have any questions from anything I just covered there, or literally anything else in regards to your training and preparation for your trips, if you want anything covered, feel free to plug it into chat, and I'm more than happy to cover anything you like.
Just while we're seeing if anybody's got any questions, if you don't necessarily have a hiking buddy in your local area, the Facebook community is like a really great way to do so. Feel free to just pop your region in and just see if anybody's hanging about in that area, because all of you are being in the same boat, trying to prepare yourselves for these trips. So please utilize that service as well.
Awesome, Cassie. So yeah, hope you can get that first one locked in, get out of the trail, go enjoy yourself, and yeah, get that ball rolling. Jade, can you do a session on preparing for high altitude hiking at some stage? Have we done that?
Yeah, it's available on our website. So if you go on the Camino Women website in the top right corner, all of the webinars that Rowan's ever done for us have been recorded and uploaded. So it's just the webinar tab is in the top right hand corner, and there's one for high altitude hiking. It's actually really quite amazing. I share it a lot.
Awesome. And for anyone checking that one out or any other ones, if you do have any questions, follow-up questions, because I know they're like massive topics. And sometimes when you're learning about these things, the way the internet works, you'll say, hey, high altitude training, and then you just get bombarded with stuff online. You're like, oh my gosh, all of these different sources of information gets a little bit complicated. If anyone does have any follow-up questions for anything, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat about this stuff. And sometimes it can be a little bit tricky, yeah, deciphering all the information. So always happy to chat. And then Nadia, I feel like I'm preparing well. I'm struggling to find some hills though. I live in far west New South Wales. So yeah, so when it comes down to finding hills, like obviously some of us are lucky enough to live near hills. Some of us not so much lucky enough. So there are a few different options which you can kind of look at, which sort of fall into similar categories. So if you can't find any hills, next best thing is if you have access to any stairs, which may or may not be applicable. So if there's a local apartment block or local, maybe not office tower in far west New South Wales, maybe local sports stadium, what it may be, that can sometimes be an action. If there's an athletics track, they can be great. That can be an option. Alternatively, if you're like, hey, there's no stairs nearby, that's not really going to work, then another option is you can do a box step session. So basically, you can find a box or a counter or like a park bench or something. Typically, something that's no more than like 3/4 up your shin. So it's not outrageously high, but it's like relatively small. And you literally just do stepping sessions up and down, up and down. It is terribly boring. It's not exciting at all. So if you're doing it at home, put a TV show on. If you're like, doing it outside, put some music on or whatever it may be. But it can do the job. And you may do periods of like stepping up for 4 minutes, have a rest, and step up for 4 minutes, have a rest, and just kind of build up stuff like that. It's not quite as good as a full outdoor set of stairs or hills because you're not so much getting the downhill equivalent, but it's kind of does the job. And I've got a lot of people all around the world who are in similar situations doing that, and it works out well enough. Um, yeah. And then Cassie doing Duke of Ed. Oh, the schedule's all been set. Perfect. Too easy. So you don't need to worry about that. You can just get out and enjoy yourself. That's awesome. Easy, guys. Any other questions while we're here this evening? No.
Rowan, I think you've given us plenty to work with. There's maybe questions next week, but not right now.
No, that's all good. And as always, if anyone does have any questions, random things pop up, just reach out and let me know. Um, but aside from that, on that note, it's been an absolute pleasure being on board this evening, everyone. Really, really great having you all here. Hope some people got some value out of it and all of that. So I'm not 100% sure what next month's topic is, but I'm sure an announcement will go out once that's all locked in. Can't remember what we're doing. But aside from that, thank you as always for having me on, and we'll talk to you all next month.
Yeah, if you have any suggestions, we're always happy to thrash that out. So send us an email or Facebook, anything you like. All right. Thanks, ladies. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. See you next month.
See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.